Good day, fellow Jersey nerds, and welcome to episode 69 of the Jersey... Oh, boy. Let me try that again, because I know someone wants to add something. Welcome to episode 69.
Nice.
Of the Jersey Nerds podcast. I thought we could be mature about episode 69, but it's clear that we do not have a mature crowd here who's willing to just let episode 69 be episode 69.
Nice.
Anyways, episode 69 is powered by hockeyjerseyconcepts.com. I'm your host, Ryan. Today on the Nerdcast, we're going to be talking about the Toronto St. Pat's jerseys, which were just re-revealed, I suppose. We saw them 2 years ago, but we'll discuss those. And the Vancouver Canucks 50th anniversary or 50th season logo has been revealed, so we'll get into that. As well, our HJC staffer, Steve, had an interview with Rebirth Sports CEO, Doug. And we'll hear a clip from that, and then we'll hear the full interview at the end of the podcast. It's a really good, in-depth discussion there. Just about their process and just design process in general, and some trends as to where hockey jersey designs may be going. And this podcast, as you can tell, there are other people here with me. Might as well go to Beepo. Beepo, what are you doing for episode 69 here?
Just recording a nice podcast, Ryan. How about you?
Well, I'm just trying to get through this intro here without it descending into chaos. Immature, juvenile chaos. On episode 69.
Nice.
Also joining us is Shawn. What's going on, Shawn?
Well, working through trade deadline day, all that stuff.
Did Mike Sillinger get traded again?
Yeah, I think Vegas picked him up for a bag of pucks.
No, it was Columbus, Shawn.
No, Columbus got Crosby, McDavid, and Ovechkin. And then I turned my PS4 off.
For a 4th round pick.
No, Ryan. It was a 3rd.
Pardon me, of course. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed trade deadline day this past weekend. Or I guess it was on a Monday.
Not.
Steve did not.
LeBron was very happy with the Leafs, Ryan.
Well, yeah, they had their 4th line trade, but Steve, as one of our resident Pens fans, it did not go well for you.
Picture, if you will, someone represented as the Penguins cleaning out a gun, but forgetting to empty out the chamber and keeping the safety off and assuming that you're not going to get shot. That is exactly how I feel of what's going on with the Penguins right now. I mean, I get where they're going with it because they got done over in the Stadium Series game, losing 2 defensemen when they're already down. So, I mean, it's a typical Pittsburgh Penguins team year.
It'll be interesting to see where they end up, but they have a quality team. I know it's hard to not be living in the moment, but they have a quality team. Corey, your team, the Canadiens, kind of stood pat during the trade deadline. How do you feel about it, and what else is going on?
I'm perfectly okay with them not making any major trades. I'm a little bit nervous when Bergevin gets, when he can make some crazy moves, but he stood pat, didn't trade any draft picks, didn't trade any prospects, and just added some depth. If they make the playoffs, I'm happy with that. If they don't, it's fine too, because I couldn't have imagined this season going this way. I thought they were going to be right at the bottom of the league alongside Ottawa, but luckily that's not the case. Also, this past weekend, I accomplished something that I've been waiting to do for a long time, and I broke my closet. I have officially too many jerseys in the closet, and it came crashing down. I believe it was Thursday or Friday.
So what's the acceptable number? How many jerseys brought down that closet?
On that rack, it was 138.
138. So that's just a PSA for everyone out there. Once you get to 137, start a new rack.
I don't think the jerseys are the problem. I think it's your closet.
Oh, it's 4 times reinforced now.
Army grade steel.
The problem too was we had a faulty stud finder. So where we drilled in originally, there was either at the end of the stud or missed the stud entirely, and then it held up as long as it could. But 138, 136, whatever it was, that did the trick on it. But I've got 4 brackets in on each one now, and so that's 8 brackets in total on the closet because I have 2 rows. So they're not going to be going anywhere now.
First world problems, ladies and gentlemen.
Lots of things going on in this world. Corey's worrying about where to put his other 138 jerseys. That's good. All right. So we got everyone here and everyone's ready to go. Trade deadline's behind us, and we got some jerseys and logos to talk about. So this past week, we had the Toronto Maple Leafs reveal their Toronto St. Pat's jerseys. They're pretty much exactly what we saw 2 years ago when they wore St. Pat's jerseys. Of course, now we have the Adidas collar applied to this jersey rather than a Reebok collar. So we're going to go over our positives and our negatives, and then we'll look at the 2 versions, the Reebok version and the Adidas version. This is specifically for jersey nerds. We're going to get in depth here on the minute details that nobody else cares about. But that's why you tuned into this podcast, because you do care about them. And then we're going to rate the jersey out of 10. So Shawn, we'll start with you, and just a positive, your biggest positive from this jersey release, re-release, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah, I'm going to give it to the collar, which is weird because I don't normally like the Adidas collar, but here it works. Mainly because everything else is nearly identical.
So nothing else,
right?
Else on the jersey works for you? Just the collar is the biggest thing that works for you?
No, everything works.
Okay.
It's just the biggest improvement is the collar. Also another improvement, the NHL 100 logo is gracefully missing.
Great point there. Beepo, Shawn likes the collar. What part of this jersey is the biggest positive for you?
I'm glad that they kept the design pretty much intact, and especially those numbers, or the boxes behind the numbers on the back. I'm really glad that they kept them. They look a little bit weird with that space in between, but I'm not sure I liked it a couple years ago in the Reebok version, but the more that I really think about it, the more it just kind of adds that vintage flair of it.
All right, Steve, what do you like?
To be honest, I think I like it more on the Adidas template than I do on the Reebok. The Adidas kind of has more of like an older cut feel, closer to pre-edge, and I think it works a lot better with this. Granted, I've always liked the numbers that they've done on there, and I think I have to agree with Jets. The collar does work a bit more, but other than that, it's the exact same jersey. So, I mean, other than getting really minute, and I mean really minute, where can we go with this?
How about you, Corey? As a Habs fan, can you appreciate this jersey? Does it suck, or what do you think of it?
So yeah, I really like the jersey. I think that the collars. Again, the Adidas collar does look better, and as it was mentioned before, I prefer that the NHL 100 logo isn't there this time around. It just kind of took away from the old school feel of it having this modern looking patch on the sleeve, but the numbers are fantastic. Just everything. I think that the green really stands out, the green stripe across the chest, because it's white, green on white. The green really pops, and I think it's a wonderful jersey.
I think my favorite part, and this would include the Reebok version as well, but it's the font in the logo, and it's not exactly the same as what was previously used. But it's a stylized font to make it look like it's from what are we talking here? The early 30s, late 1920s. It's a custom font. I think it goes really well, and especially looks really well in the faux felt look. And it works with the numbers, and even the little X, it's not little, but the big kind of X pattern stitching going through the numbers as if they're old school numbers that they had to stitch these individual panels on to get the proper numbers. I think those are my favorite parts of the jersey. And as you guys mentioned, the lack of an NHL 100 patch is exceptional. And it's kind of funny if you think about that NHL 100 patch. I can't really think of too many people who are like, yeah, that's cool. Yet the NHL 75th anniversary patch kind of has this charm, and people really enjoyed the retro sweaters that came out. Nobody really ever thinks like, oh, that really intruded on any sweaters. So it's kind of funny just the difference 25 years there will make. Now let's go to the negatives. For me, it's the Adidas collar. That was a positive for a couple of you guys, but the Adidas collar kind of sticks out here. I wish they kind of did it the same way they did it with the Arenas jersey, where it goes all the way around and doesn't stop at the Pentagon, but it is what it is. Shawn, what's bothering you about this jersey?
Everything you said about the numbers. I am not a fan of this look. I might have been at the time when these first came out. I don't remember. But I don't like them right now. And I think that's because the jerseys that they're based on, the 1922-25 St. Patrick's jersey, is actually one of my favorite jerseys, not just that the St. Patrick's wore, but that like in the whole Leafs franchise history. And I don't like that it's not fully intact here. I don't even want a name on the back. You know what I mean?
That's true. Well, the jersey, because the stripe does go all the way around, this wouldn't be too plain of a jersey if you were not to get a number.
No, but, you know, I mean, who wants to walk around with a jersey without a name on the back of it?
Me? I have lots of jerseys without names. But that's fine. All right. So the numbers,
Same here.
the numbers aren't everyone's cup of tea. And we'll go to some Pittsburgh fans who have experienced a similar thing with their NFL Steelers. But Beepo, what's not to like about this jersey?
I'm going to have to mostly agree with what you said on this one, Ryan. I do like the collar and how thick it is, but I really wish it did wrap around all the way and, you know, the Pentagon was filled in green. And I mean, the laces are okay. I think it would be better without the laces. I don't think they take too much away from it, but they're not as effective as the Reebok laces were. I'm sure we've talked about that many times, just talking about Adidas jerseys.
How about you, Steve?
I think the fact that it's so similar and there's not enough differences, and it kind of just feels like an opportunity for them to bring back a jersey that everybody liked, really bothers me about it. Other than that, I don't have too many negatives. I like how they kept the bottom hem straight instead of curved like all the other jerseys. So that was a nice choice on it. But like I said, I find it kind of like okay, you're pulling what Calgary did, is that they're just pulling off from everyone loved the red alternate jersey, so they're just keeping it that way. Same with what Columbus did. So I mean, I really wish they would have done something slightly different or changed something up, but I mean, I can't really complain too much. It's a good jersey.
Corey, what sucks about these jerseys?
Come to think of it now, actually, I like the Adidas collar, but I think if it was more of the Winter Classic style Adidas collar, then that might have just put it over the top a little bit for me. It kind of looks the same, but it's got the ribbed collar in it. I think that would have given it more of an old school feel, even more than it already has. The complaints about the numbers, like I get it, but I also get why the numbers are the way they are. So realistically, I don't have a problem with it.
All right. So we didn't have the podcast around when the Reebok version came out. And now we have the Adidas version to compare. And this is our chance to choose whether or not one is better than the other. And for me, looking at the Adidas version, I mean, they're both extremely similar. It's just the template of the jersey that makes it different. So I think the kind of dimpled shoulders that Reebok, or the dimpled yokes that Reebok likes to use, it works here on the St. Pat's jersey. but then the collar doesn't work. I much prefer the Reebok collar. It looks cleaner and kind of fits in more with a classic looking throwback jersey. So if I had to get down to it, I would choose the Reebok version is better. But Shawn, if you had to choose, you have to choose one version or the other. Which one's better and why?
The Adidas version is far superior because it doesn't get caught on everything that, isn't 100% smooth.
Okay, Beepo, which one's better?
It's very close, but I'm going to give it to the Adidas version. I know I've mentioned before that I think the Reebok template, or the Reebok Edge template, is almost starting to look borderline dated at this point. So maybe it's just that, but I think the thickness of the collar adds just a little bit more than the Pentagon being white takes away from it.
How about you, Steve?
I'm just going to have to give it a little sliver to Adidas, just because, like I said originally, I always feel that Adidas has more of that classic cut than what Reebok did. So I think it works better with this jersey design than what the Reebok did.
And Corey, Adidas or Reebok, which version's better?
I'm going to give the slight edge to Adidas. The only thing about the Reeboks that kind of sways me towards Adidas is the collar insert on the Reeboks really takes away a little bit of the vintage feel for me. And I own the Reebok version of it. And if I didn't have that one and I had to choose between one or the other, I would take Adidas.
Yeah, I missed out on the Reebok release, and I always kicked myself because of that. So maybe that's contributing to my excitement here of the Adidas release. I may be more along the lines of, this jersey again, if I had picked up the Reebok version. But I'm very excited here to get my hands on this Adidas version now that it's out, and maybe possibly Fanatics. I know I'm going to be beat up for saying that, but that's where I stand. Let's rate this jersey. You could consider both Reebok and Adidas versions because they're so similar, but give this jersey a rating out of 10. Shawn, we'll go to you first.
I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10.
Why 7.5?
I'm with you on the whole. I kind of wanted something new in the back of my head, this thing again. On the other hand, you can not get Nylander on this one.
Beepo, rating out of 10.
I think I'll give it an 8.75 because I'm right in between 8.5 and 9. I can't really decide. It's a really nice jersey. The collar's one of the only things that really take away anything from it. And I don't really think we'd be as thinking, I don't know if we'd be as yearning for something new if it was released on Adidas a couple of years ago and then just back again, same template. I'm really wondering how much of this whole switch over to Adidas is giving us the whole wanting something new thing. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
I don't know if I that well.
Yep, I hear you on that one. Steve, your rating out of 10?
I'm going to give it a solid 8. I always found that this design worked really well because not only did they modernize the St. Pat's logo and give it more of a stylized, but still made it look like it was from the style, but they just added in some things that to the average person, you'd think, oh yeah, that was something that they wore back then. No, there's differences to it, which really only people on our level would understand, but it's a solid jersey for something that's going to be worn about 2 times a year.
And Corey, your rating.
Well, first of all, Shawn being a smart ass with the Nylander comment is because I have Nylander on my St. Pat's jersey. So I give it personally an 8 out of 10. I think that it looks really good. Like I said, it's got a good contrast with the green stripe on the white jersey. It really stands out. I think if it was worn as a regular third, it might wear thin, but considering this is going to be only after this year 3 times they've worn the jersey, it's fine by me that they're using this design again.
Yeah, I'm also going to give it an 8. And I think it's contributing to that is my excitement. As I mentioned, missed out on the Reebok version, so I'm excited. I really enjoy the logo font, just like I mentioned, and the overall design of the jersey. Well, it has been done numerous times by other teams in different colors. It is a very clean design, simple white and green here. The green looks fantastic. The overall jersey looks fantastic. So I'm giving the jersey an 8 out of 10. That brings average score here to 8.05 amongst us. So anybody who said 8 out of 10 was correct, and anybody else who gave a different rating was wrong, and you've been kicked off the podcast. Thanks for coming out. No, I'm just joking, but 8 out of 10 is
All right, Ryan. I'm about to head out.
8 out of 10 is our average rating here, and that's pretty fair. So if you're looking for our post from Hockey Jersey Concepts, you can check that out in the description of this episode. And leave your comments there and join in the conversation on what you think of the Toronto St. Pat's Heritage jersey. I guess that's what they're calling it. I don't think they came out with a name, throwback or heritage or specialty or something, but it's going to be worn twice during the 2018-19 season, back-to-back home games. This past week, Steve had a chance to interview Rebirth Sports CEO Doug. They got pretty in-depth there with a nice half-hour interview. So if you want to listen to the whole interview, we're going to put it at the end of this podcast. It's a really good sit-down interview with Doug, and just a lot of details in there about their design process and what they look for. They're big into college hockey. They do a lot of designs, and Steve gets into a lot of the limitations that Rebirth is under when they want to do those teams. We're going to provide a little clip here of their interview, but again, like I said, the full interview is going to be at the end of this podcast. So once we conclude here, don't press stop. Keep listening because we got a great interview coming up. But for now, let's take a quick listen to the interview that Steve did with Doug from Rebirth Sports.
I can understand that. Speaking design-wise, do you see any trends that are happening these days? And what I mean by that is, for example, like back in between the mid to late 2000s, you had teams like Pittsburgh and Florida and St. Louis. It was the Roundel logo on a blue jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in my opinion, the most absurd one was when Florida decided to do it, when it just made no sense for them. But that's what I mean. Like, do you see any trends that teams are trying to follow or that they want to go with today?
From an NHL standpoint, I think there's a lot of history with some programs that you can pull all the time. A Detroit, a Canadians. I mean, they haven't really changed their look, but they've had it for so long that it's hard to make something different. I think when the NHL did that for Detroit and Toronto, I mean, there's only so many things you can do so many times without completely trying something different. It's good to see that, but from a movement standpoint, I would probably say it seems like everybody's trying to bring out that third throwback or traditional. The Coyotes one, I love that black one that they've done. It brings back memories from my age group that I've always loved when Roenick was playing in that kind of a time period to Tocchet. And it's something totally different off the wall. But I love what the Whalers did. Technically, it's not the Whalers, but I love that pull where it's completely different. I'd love to see like a California Seals and.
I know. Yeah. I mean, it was beautiful what the Carolina Hurricane did, finally stating that yes, we did steal from Hartford, but
it's paying homage. It's paying homage.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah.
That's a nice way to say it.
Yeah.
Okay, that was good stuff there. And again, if you want to listen to it, the entire interview will be at the end of the podcast. So, Steve, that was a pretty good talk with Doug that you had. What'd you take overall from that?
Really, it was kind of stuff that we've talked about before. Just me and him when I would talk to him about potential teams that he was doing or trying to get a story or trying to get words out. The ACHA, which is the essentially club level of hockey for a lot of schools that don't have a team, or for schools that do have a team, but then they also have a club team. So Doug himself played club in the ACHA level at Saginaw Valley, and I unfortunately we had to do the podcast because of audio issues, but we went into in depth about some of the teams that he's done and how, like Maryland, a lot of people have seen Maryland how they use the flag in the yoke, and we talked about that, how basically he's just trying to get to see if they were at the NCAA level, how would they look, and try to educate people on a lot of what they don't know is that with colleges there can be limitations, and there's also differences between being a licensed user of all the logos and producing things for kids at the school and for the alumni, and then being able to sell it. And we kind of just scratched the surface on it, but if you want to get an understanding of what a design process would be of him, especially someone who's been a fan of our website and actually looks at and they see some of your designs and they're like, oh, that's a really good jersey design idea. So I mean, it's a good interview to hear. We had a lot of fun with it. Doug's a big fan of the website, and he was really grateful to take out his time and talk to us about how he does his work and, just to promote him. Not promote himself, really, but promote overall college club hockey.
Yeah, it was a solid interview. And again, you can catch that interview at the end of this podcast. It's a good listen. So take a listen to that. We had the Vancouver Canucks reveal their 50th season logo. They're not calling it 50th anniversary. They're calling it 50th season, which is weird because I didn't think there was a season in 2004, 2005, but here they are celebrating their 50th season. The logo itself, we only saw the white version on a blue background, but we have the number 50 in the current Canucks font, and then we have the stick from their current alternate logo, which comes up in the negative space and helps form the 5. Underneath the 50, we have the current Canucks logo, and that's surrounded by the 2 years, their original year, 1970, and their 50th year, 2020. So we'll cover positives and negatives here at the same time, and then at the end of that, we'll give a rating out of 10. So, Corey, we'll go to you for your thoughts on this logo.
I thought it was a creative way to use to incorporate their secondary logo into the design. Other than that, there's kind of not a whole lot going on. A lot of teams can go a little bit overboard with the detail on it. This one's a little bit plain. I haven't quite decided if I think it's too plain or I don't know. I think it's all right. I don't know. I haven't really formulated a solid opinion on it yet. I think I need to give it some time before I truly make up my mind if I like it or dislike it. For now, I'm pretty neutral on it.
All right, and we'll go to Steve with his initial thoughts on the Canucks 50th season logo.
I actually like it. I think it follows a good design trend. I think it's creative that it uses their current number font, but it puts the hockey stick in Rink logo's hockey stick for the 50 in there. So, but I think really just the other thing with it is just overall it's kind of plain, but it's following what design trends are at this time. And I think I like the 40th better than the 50th, but I think what they have planned for it, because if you looked at the video that they did all their colors in it. So I think they did it because they're going to use this on the jersey, but they're going to probably put it in yellow or orange or red on the flying skate jersey that they're going to be wearing. And who knows what they're going to be doing for the alternate. So that could be a completely different color as well.
Beepo, your breakdown of the Vancouver Canucks 50th season logo?
I'm going to have to agree with both Corey and Steve in that I really like the stick in the negative space of the 5. I don't really mind that it's the version from their current alternate logo rather than their original stick, because it's the same logo in essence. I mean, obviously there's a lot of subtle design differences, but it's the same general idea. And I sort of wonder if they could have done it in the 0 instead of there. but at the same time, I don't think it would have used the negative space as well. I think that one would almost look a little bit too forced in a way, if that makes sense. And I also think that they maybe could have done a little bit better incorporating the years into the logo itself rather than just kind of throwing it down under there. But I don't hate the way that it is, and especially after what Steve mentioned with how many different colorways they're going to be able to put this in and how many they might have to put this in. I think that keeping it this simple is definitely a very smart idea.
All right, Shawn, can you say something that hasn't been said yet about the 50th season logo?
I certainly can, but first I'd like to issue a correction. We here at HJC take accuracy incredibly seriously, and I was unaware that Corey's St. Pat's jersey did have Nylander on the back. I just don't like Nylander.
Well, I'm good. That's cleared up.
HJC.
Yeah, I
apologize for that.
I'm glad that's cleared up. I think anyone listening to the podcast could feel the tension between you two, so I'm glad that the air is cleared now.
What, Nylander and me? Oh, that's still there. And that's not going away.
You and Corey genius.
Yeah, okay. All right. Painfully mediocre is the words I'd use to describe these Canucks jerseys.
Jerseys or logo, but, and you're...
No, I have jerseys. No. You think that's an error. It's not, because the idea of bringing back the skate logo again on a fuck.
Don't you start with the flying skate. I will fight you.
What do you mean play it out? All right.
No. I said don't you start. I will fight you.
20th anniversary, great. 25th anniversary, fantastic. 30th, about as good as you're going to get with that color scheme in that era. 40th, beautiful. 50th, painfully mediocre, and I do mean painfully mediocre. I like the little stick thingy, but other than that, I'm not shelling out $15 to sew this on a Tanner Pearson Canucks jersey.
Screw you.
See, that's a jab. But I will say, what Steve said about the whole, this is going to be in a million different colors and we don't know what the alternate's going to have, is 100% right. But as is, I think of it like this. If I'm paying patch memorabilias or some schmuck on eBay, $25 Canadian for a patch for a jersey, and then another 10 to get it sewn on, do I really want this? No.
Well, this one, for me, it's clean, so I like that. It's simple. It gets the point across, so in that way, it accomplishes what it's supposed to do. So that's good. Well, some people find that the stick in the negative space there works well. I think it's a little forced. I think it comes across as, oh, people really like this design element when people use the negative space, but it seems a little forced to me. It's not horrendous though. I would like to see more eras represented in the logo, but as Steve mentioned, this can be done in many different colorways, and maybe even they'll change that primary logo that's used within the 50th season mark. Who knows? Or maybe they'll keep it the same. But as Steve mentioned, they can change the color of the logo to represent whatever era they need represented. So in that way, it works. So let's go to our ratings out of 10. I'm going to start us off, and I think adequately this gets a 7 out of 10. How about you, Corey?
I would say about a 6.5 out of 10 for me.
Steve?
I'd have to be, tongue-tied. I'd have to say about 7 out of 10.
Beepo?
Gonna triple down on that 7 out of 10. It's a little plain, but I think it accomplishes what it needs to.
Jonathan?
I am going to, excuse me?
You heard me. Now rate the damn logo.
I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10, the same rank that the Canucks are in the West. in the Pacific. They are not the 5th ranked. So, wow, we are just this is the corrections episode.
You're going to end up in corrections if you keep this up. Zing.
You called me Jonathan.
How much have you been drinking tonight?
None. I just took a nap before the podcast, so.
An alcohol.
So you're still like half asleep.
An alcohol infused nap?
No, just a regular nap.
It does not sound like it. Anyways,
I'm sorry.
With everyone's rating, this comes out to an average of 6.5. And if you want to take a look at the logo, again, our post on Hockey Jersey Concepts, we've linked it in the episode description. So go check that out. Go check out the post and tell us what you think about the logo. That is everything that we have for you this week. Be sure to subscribe to all of our podcasts across the network and share it with your friends. We have Fake or Authentic that comes out on Thursdays, and we have Throwback Throwdown, and that comes out on Saturdays. We have the Montreal Maroons redesign contest going on hockeyjerseyconcepts.com. You can head on over to our webpage and click the banner on the side of the page to read all the rules. Entries for that are due March 8th. Also going on, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets redesign featuring Stinger as the primary logo. Top 3 votes going on right now, and that ends on March 1st. So I'd like to thank Beepo, Steve, Shawn, and Corey for being on this week's podcast, and I'd like to thank everyone for listening, and goodbye.
Hello, everybody. This is Steve with HJC. I'm here for an in-depth interview with Doug Green from Rebirth Sports. Doug, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Thanks for being on the show today.
Sure.
So, just wanted to talk today to you about your design processes, what it's like making hockey jerseys, essentially being an owner and designer of hockey jerseys on a daily basis, what it's like. So, I mean, if you could just go into some background of yourself real quick so we get an understanding of how you ended up getting to here.
Sure. I played, it kind of started with playing club college hockey myself here in Michigan, in mid-Michigan. And when we finished up school, after the team was done, I pretty much kind of carried the stuff that we're doing during college, which was, funny T-shirts, different designs for stuff for the team. And it kind of sparked into more from there. And it turned into conversations of finding suppliers and working through materials and processes and templates, and it kind of spawned from there until eventually it was ordering uniforms, and got really lucky with a handful of friends that were still playing at different universities and gave us the opportunity to give it a try, which obviously led to more and more from there. But I went to school for graphic design and marketing, and double majored in that, and prior to getting into it, I worked for one of the major automotive companies and just couldn't stand being in a cubicle all day. So I just kind of worked on this on the side until eventually it became a full-time thing. And now it's gone into levels I never even would have thought of. So there's no real map to it. Everyone always that asks that question, there's no real way that I can say it's a straight line somewhere.
You kind of just like walked your way into it, and just one day you ended up there.
Start with something we thought would be cool. From my perspective, I try to look at a team, whether it's a college, and say, this would be cool if it could look like this. Try to go from that perspective. I was still playing at that level. If I was on that team, what would be cool to wear? What would be a way to represent that university if I was stepping into that gear? Is kind of the mindset that I look at it from. But I think I'd also had a unique perspective that starting from a club level where you knew budget was so important, that's where I kind of stayed around that. I haven't really tried to push too much of us trying to get into NCAA or any of the major stuff. We've looked into it, but there's so many protocols and there's so much of a need for it at the level that we're currently at that I'd rather outfit as much as we can, as often as we can, because there's an opportunity there all the time. It's just hard to fill. So
yeah, and so just before we talk about design, I want to talk about, and how you said, like, you played club hockey, so obviously there's restrictions on what you can and can't use. A lot of people don't realize how restrictive colleges can be when it comes to using the athletic logos for club sports. So do you mind just going into the process of maybe like, because I do know two colleges are like when it comes to it, but what's the normal process, or what's like the average main siding to going into getting the permissions for using certain logos, or getting told this is how you can use it, this is what you can use it for?
Sure. The biggest consensus is a lot of schools, regardless of the institution, treat the club rank completely differently on a school-by-school basis, but the majority of them try to make sure there's a differentiating factor that's apparent between if they have an NCAA program already there, or if they have logos that they want to allow to be used, but they really have to have, whether the word club has to be on the uniform somewhere, it has to say hockey club or whatever it is, it might have to be on a shoulder logo. It really comes down to school by school. Some don't care. Some are really strict about it. Others are on a design by design basis. But basically they come in and say, we want our branding to be under a certain protocol. And for us, what a lot of people don't realize is, as a vendor, there's probably about 3 or 4 major licensing companies that are the umbrella companies for the majority of the institutions across the nation, big or small. There's obviously some that handle them internally themselves, like a Notre Dame or Kentucky. But then you have something like University of Maryland that they are through one of the biggest licensing companies that's out there. So we have to go through a lot of background checks. They have to do checks on our quality, prototypes, materials used, make sure we're not working with places like a Bangladesh unless we have an agreement. We have Fair Labor Association agreements, so we can prove different stuff about our suppliers. We have to go through all that before they even consider a vendor to be a person to reproduce a mark. And at that point, we get a branding standard per university, and then we still have to submit within the designs that the team was hoping for that we help them design. It kind of goes from there to the school has to sign off on it for the use of what they're going to do it for. And then we have to re-up that every year. And there's multiple random checks from those licensing companies. They give you calls. They ask for supply chain information. You name it, all that has to go on. And a lot of schools don't, team-wise, don't realize that, they just think we're so-and-so university. We want to use this type of a look. This is the colors we want. They don't realize we have to kind of go through those steps in the beginning. But once it gets taken care of, it really builds a better relationship with the program and the university to see more leniency in the future, see more growth, support, whether it's financial or otherwise. When the team does well, obviously it's always good. But if you went through the appropriate protocols for it, they really let it shine. They repost something. They put something on their own social media. You name it. When you do it right, they usually come back. It comes back to help you in certain ways from a program standpoint. So for our side of it, we're always trying to. Our theme is grow the game. So I mean, from that ranking level, some of these schools that we've been able to work with, luckily, have got notoriety from the jerseys, unintentionally from their part, to turn into better recruiting, knowledge of the program in the state that they're in. You name it, it turns into a lot more benefits just because you take the right steps and you make something that's quality. I think that really turns a corner for a lot of the programs that have such a big sports background as a university in general. So, but there's a lot of steps. So,
and I can assume, and just also speaking on licensing, there's a big difference between being an authorized user to be able to produce the jerseys for the teams, essentially, and then when it comes time where a team says to you, say just on a college level, as we're going again, say like, and it not trying to name schools, but just giving an example, say Maryland or Kentucky or something, they wanted to sell them. That's a completely different license, correct?
Yep. Well, there's a standard retail license, which is what is needed for third-party consumption or public sales or fundraisers, and then there's a internal, which is what we try to get first, because that allows us as a vendor to produce game day items, uniforms, travel gear, coaching staff gear, anything that the team or the program itself would use, what they call internally. Everybody has a different description of what falls under internal. So if it's usually all the club sports are internal, or alumni can sometimes be that. But basically, we can only sell the appropriate items that are approved through certain channels. So to get a retail channel, it's a much more thorough process. They want to know how many, they want to know what the nameplates are going to have on them. If there's nameplates, they want to know the times of the year it's going to be done. There's notices that have to go on posts online that have to say particular verbiage that notify that company is a licensed vendor and that they're being produced for a particular reason, especially at a club level, because they don't want it to be disassociated with if there's a varsity program or they have a situation where there could be a chance for confusion. So there's that, and then there's a whole other level of royalties and upfront fees that have to go into it that most schools, and every school is different. So a Maryland might be more expensive to get started with than a community college that's also part of that licensing company, just for purposes of they all set their fees and their royalty rates different for what they believe is needed, but we have to address that. Like a Kentucky has a royalty rate that's a little bit less than a Maryland, and another school might be more than Maryland. It's whatever the school decides and sends us as the protocol. So, but it's got to be allocated for when you're trying to grow a program and they want to try to do a fundraiser. You got to allow for understanding that, there's royalty fees and there's advances that you have to do just to get started before they approve it and before you get an executed contract. So there's a lot more steps, but once it's done and you have it and you build a good relationship with that university and they're aware that you're doing quality work and following the rules, they are wide open to, renewals. They're wide open to more advantages for possibly lowering rates for future renewals. So it's a way to get money back to those programs unknowingly to them, because a lot of them don't know that process, but they just would love to be able to sell to their fans, their relatives, alumni that come to games, or a lot of people nowadays. We saw a lot of them, and they just want to wear them even to other sporting events because they want to support their alma mater or their current school. They don't necessarily always want to just wear it to a hockey game. It's become kind of a fashion thing, so that's cool too.
It's always good when your business becomes fashion. So
yeah, hopefully.
But now when it comes to, just want to talk about, say, the standard process. Say you're speaking to College A, and they can use their main logos. The school gives you permission to use the main logos.
Yep.
Where do you go from there? Do you just come up with certain designs for them if they just say go wild on it? Or if they have a certain design frame, do you have to say, okay, I can go within these parameters?
Yeah, it's a school by school, but if you could take a team that might be coming out of a completely different look that they weren't allowed those logos previously, a Maryland is a good example to use. Before they went with us, they were using replica Reebok jerseys that were, and that's not anything against Reebok, it's probably what they had the allowance to use. They were using an Old English M instead of the actual logos of the school, and then the branding standards changed at the right time for us and for them, and we were figuring out what we needed, but basically we came in and said, let's get you out of a replica Red Wing jersey, which was the closest colors they could find at the time, which might have been their budget situation as well, but we tried to come in and give them the best possible price we could and revamp their whole look so that it fell into a protocol that if you looked at it, you would instantly know it's Maryland, you would instantly know it's an athletic, feel to it. But we try to do that with every school. So we do research every time a school gets a hold of us, especially if we never worked with them. And if they're big, like Oregon or Kentucky or Maryland or Florida Gators, they all have, most of those schools from a sports perspective have already built an identity that we try to rekindle, but in a hockey way, giving them different features. Obviously the teams will come to us a lot of times and say, we really want to have a white or a black or a red or whatever base color. And we try to work with what they want to an extent. And then other teams come to us and say, we love what you're doing, just go wild with it. And then we'll kind of narrow it down from there. And especially, like you said, if there's logos that are involved, we try to take what logo's there and not make something that wouldn't look right, where the logo's got a bunch of detail, but the design's really plain. Unless that's exactly what a team wants, we try to give them throwbacks and new styles and different collar combinations, different striping patterns. Some teams come to us and want a third jersey for outdoor games. It's the best part about the job is it's different almost every day, whether it's an amateur program, but from a college level, it's really cool because you can usually draw a lot from a team like a Notre Dame that has such a tradition to it. You can pull features that really bring it design-wise to a Notre Dame feel, where the same thing with a Kentucky or Maryland. They all have such a distinct feel to them. So it's really cool to be able to take them outside of just an NHL striping cut and put them into their own full-out look from top to bottom.
Yeah, and just seeing some of the details that you do on it, like the checkerboard pattern within the pant stripe of Kentucky, or when Maryland had the flag in the yoke. That was a highly popular jersey among all of us.
Oh, yeah, we still get asked about those all the time, for sure. But those are those things that when you have a school like that, they can pull that very easily, where you might do another school that college is in Maryland that wants to have the flag, but there's no way they can pull off Maryland pride in quite the same way as the University of Maryland. So things like that, Kentucky, you bring that in there. Checkerboard we did years ago for a couple other schools that have it in their design that just, it allows for it. So, but a Kentucky, you can keep it clean, you can keep it, straightforward. They're very neat about it, a Harvard type of feel, those type of things where you don't need, how do I find a way to do 15 stripes isn't always needed. So we try to get a feel from the school, a feel from the coaching staff, the students, and usually, especially from a university, they want to feel as though if that club level were to be snap your fingers and it was a D1 program, we would hope that they would look that's one of the ways we would envision them to look if Kentucky had a D1 program like their basketball program or their football, those types of things. We try to take it that way from a visual and how we put it together. We wouldn't want to try to give something that says maybe they'll graduate to a varsity program and look completely different. We'd hope that they would adopt something like that and it would fit their branding right off the bat. So
make it seamless. So it's and like I always say, when people usually see your jerseys, and I always talk to someone, they're always like, "We have a hockey team at our school." So
that's the best responses you can have, and then hopefully after that it turns into, how do I get one? Or I've been to every game since I found out there was a team. Because at the end of the day, if more people go to a hockey game, and around here we have it as well, but our hockey program probably rivaled the football level in terms of fans and supporters. So it's good to see, especially in a southern area like a Kentucky or a Florida that just boomed with participation, and now hopefully with wearing a jersey that is noticed and gets some national recognition, they will maybe pull some players that might have traveled somewhere else and made the program, a better program talent-wise, and then they can either move up the ranks and go from D3 to D2 or eventually go to a varsity level if the school feels like there's that type of response. That would be the end goal for us anytime, is if we could have put our mark on something that eventually caused it to go a varsity, kind of like Penn State did a few years back. We weren't a part of that by any means, but that type of thing would be pretty neat to see, where it's playing against a Big Ten school and all of a sudden the next year there's Maryland. And if they wore our jerseys, we would be ecstatic and we would follow every protocol needed. But in terms of that leap, is a pretty big leap because it's such financial bearing on a school. But that would be the best feeling would be that, to see something like that go on. But hopefully it does. I mean, I want the sport to grow. I love it. I grew up playing it, so it's hard for me not to want it to do well, regardless of how it goes. So
I don't blame you. Hockey's a fun sport, and I think at the NCAA level of college, you also look at, you have Penn State, who has the Pagula Ice Arena, which is there's well over 10,000 seats, and then you go up to Northwest PA in Erie at Mercyhurst, and they have just seats about 1,200. So I mean, when it comes to college like that,
I mean, you're going to have your bigger schools, too. So,
yeah.
You got Yost up here in Michigan. That's just nostalgic, and it's a huge old barn that they redo, and there's no way to get around that. No matter what team comes in there, I would want to play there, just because it's one of those places, like the big houses for football. It just happens to be one of those spots where you have some pretty big schools that are really big that might have an average size rink, but if they have the talent and do well, these programs are going to get better and better. And then the best part is the youth that's around those areas will pick up that sport instead of picking up baseball or football or something. Maybe they'll try hockey because that program did well. Or now what I've seen a lot of, which is great, is the youth going to the club level programs because they're in the area. And it might not, what is it the top hockey ever? Probably not, but is it still fun and giving the kids something to strive for? I think that's just as important on another end. So,
all right, now speaking from a design perspective,
sure.
As you know, just design with hockey jerseys is always changing. And from what I've seen, from what your company does, you guys can do pretty much most stuff. I've seen you guys do all kinds of colors. I know you guys, the traditional tie down collar is kind of your signature there, but I've seen you guys go into the traditional style pointed, as well as CCM's new style collar in the AHL, as well as doing a Adidas style collar as well. Is that just something that you're doing at a customer request, or is it something that you're just trying to branch out into make more of a variety for the customer in general?
Oh, we always want to give them variety, so it's always cool to be able to say you can mix and match whatever you want. It doesn't change the price, which is fantastic for us. The other good thing is you get some teams that come in and they really want a modern feel, so they're not going to want a traditional tie-up or something that's V-neck, throwback. They want that similar to what the NHL is wearing. We can put logos in those areas that give them more customization, maybe a small letter for their school or a symbol that's, tiny enough in that area to fill that area. The Army is a good example of that, Army West Point. We did a similar collar to what their varsity program did, and then could put the West Point with a star in the collar, which is really something they were wanting to try to find. So we built that collar specifically after their request, but then we've had people that mention it at other times, and it's easy to transition into some newer orders if it comes to it. But it's always fun to say, how can we make this work for a particular look? So it's partly a request. I've seen a lot more of the Adidas request since Adidas took over. Everybody wants to, especially from a juniors travel program, they seem to want it more than college. College stays with a lot of tradition, or they'll make a direct request for it. But there's certain aspects of that design we don't want to get so close that we get mistaken for Adidas or anything like that from a competitive standpoint. But at the same time, we understand customers are going to want certain things and certain abilities, which we try to give them as much as we can without going too far into another company type of thing.
I can understand that. Speaking design-wise, do you see any trends that are happening these days? And what I mean by that is, for example, like back in between the mid to late 2000s, you had teams like Pittsburgh and Florida and St. Louis. It was the Roundel logo on a blue jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in my opinion, the most absurd one was when Florida decided to do it, when it just made no sense for them. But that's what I mean. Like, do you see any trends that teams are trying to follow or that they want to go with today?
From an NHL standpoint, I think there's a lot of history with some programs that you can pull all the time. A Detroit, a Canadians. I mean, they haven't really changed their look, but they've had it for so long that it's hard to make something different. I think when the NHL did that for Detroit and Toronto, I mean, there's only so many things you can do so many times without completely trying something different. It's good to see that, but from a movement standpoint, I would probably say it seems like everybody's trying to bring out that third throwback or traditional. The Coyotes one, I love that black one that they've done. It brings back memories from my age group that I've always loved when Roenick was playing in that kind of a time period to Tocchet. And it's something totally different off the wall. But I love what the Whalers did. Technically, it's not the Whalers, but I love that pull where it's completely different. I'd love to see a California Seals, and
I know. I mean, it was beautiful what the Carolina Hurricane did, finally stating that, yes, we did steal from Hartford, but
it's paying homage. It's paying homage.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah.
That's a nice way to say it.
Yeah.
So what are some things that your company is trying to further improve on or further work on or try to diversify from?
I think with our motto being that we just try to give every player or coach the opportunity to have high quality stuff at an honest price. I think growing up, the hardest thing was you'd love something and wish it had 2 stripes or had 3 colors on the number. It would be cool if it could be this. when you were a kid playing travel, for me at least, and then you realized a lot of those companies, a lot of those retailers at a local shop, they would charge per color, per stripe, stitch count, setup fees. There was just a mudding of the waters in that aspect. So for us, it's more, if we can give you a great price for a quality product that you're not going to be able to touch the price or the design with that price most anywhere else, I think for us, it really, that's what we try to do, because at the end of the day, if we can give a team exactly what they want and a price that doesn't kill them and they can travel more or they can use more money towards practice to get the program better, I think that's our drive. But ours is always, let's do something fun that there's a reaction to what they're wearing. I mean, just like Hartford Whalers jerseys, when you see that, because you're not ready for it for a split second, it's you just zone into it. So the fun part is you can make something like that, like we did for Maryland, Kentucky, different ones where all of a sudden you instantly know who they are, but at the same time you're like, oh, that's really cool because you weren't ready for it. I think that's always a feature for us, but we don't really try to say, how do we reinvent the wheel? I think there's so many companies like an Adidas, they had to do something different to pull away from a Reebok look. I don't think that's bad, but they got so many mixed reviews when they did it that it doesn't mean you have to change it that way. Maybe it's just a simple, let's invert something or listen to the people. A lot of times what we have is, what I love about your guys' site is you can go there and see what the voting is, and what you hear on the podcast you guys have is, I'd love to see this, love to see that. So it's a good way for us from an artistic and a design side to go, hey, that would be kind of cool. How do we work that design into a completely different team, but they want a similar idea? That's always the fun part from a design area. So there's nothing we're really pushing other than, how can we help grow the programs? How can we help grow the sport? How can we not kill everybody on prices? And then really actually customize something, because a lot of places will say you can customize it, and then it turns into, here's the 5 striping designs you can do, that all you can do is switch the colors out but keep the same stripes. We try to say, a lot of companies come to us, or a lot of teams come to us and think that we're a company that has a massive list of a catalog of all the options. We really try to do it like a glorified tailor. A team comes in and says what they want to an extent. We try to mix and match and give them options, and then play stuff, and then until they get to a point where they walk away in the jersey they have, hopefully no one's going to have anything close to that or exactly the same. Like you would see a lot of teams come to us now that are coming from a replica NHL jersey. So they might be Ottawa's colors, and the only options they have were Ottawa and Chicago for black, red, and white.
Oh, God bless them.
So then you try to take them out of that and say, okay, here's some designs in red, here's some designs in black, here's some gray, here's some white. Try to give as many options so that they feel like they're getting exactly what they want is our main goal, whatever the product is. Jerseys, bags, warm-ups, backpacks. We try to, from a swag perspective, we try to go at it as, if you were a varsity program or you were a high-end travel team, but even though you're a house league or you're community college in ACHA, we don't care what level you're at. We just want you to feel like when you get on the ice, you feel like $1 million. Feel great coming in and out of the rink, on the bus. That's the funnest part, because there's a window of time, especially from college, that you just want to have the best experience and not be worrying about, I have no money for that, or I can't stand what we wear, but I just want to play the sport. So try to make it as fun as possible. It's all about fun.
All right, well, on that note, I just want to thank you. That's all the time we had for you today.
Sure.
So, Doug, thanks so much for coming on. I know we've worked with you continually. So, thanks for being such a great partner with us and doing such good work with us. So, but yeah, you have a good rest of your day. Everyone, thank you so much for listening in to our in-depth interview, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day, okay?